So we had several successful test drives on our 2011 LR4 after we replaced the camshaft and replaced all the timing equipment. Ended up also replacing 4 injectors, all on the driver's side, and she's running good. So now what we're going to be doing, we have it in the shop up on jack stands. We're going to replace front and rear brake rotors. We'll start on the rear. We'll replace the rotors and the brake pads. Okay, we got the driver's side rear tire off, wheel. Went ahead and sprayed some WD-40 just around here. Help loosen it up, make it easier. And then we'll have to use this, remove this screw here to remove the rotor. Before we do that, we got to remove the caliper plus the caliper mounting bracket. So we'll get the tools for that. We'll pull the caliper up, zip tie it up so it doesn't get damaged. Then we'll get this bracket off. Then we'll swap out the rotor. Okay, so to take these calipers off, you'll need a number 13 wrench for this, and then a number 15. If you got a slim wrench, it'll work. And then you slide that on here, you hold it, and you unscrew this. And you do that for both upper and lower bolts. And then we should be able to pull this caliper out. Okay, so all I did was use a screwdriver and lightly pry it out. Again, you want to make sure you get your parking brake off on these. Pry the top a little bit, and then it'll work your way out. And you still have your pads left in place. Something I didn't mention at the beginning of the video is the reason why we're doing the brakes on this, not necessarily because the pads need it. When we step on the brakes, there's a lot of pulsation and vibration through the brake pedal and the steering wheel. So most likely the front rotors are warped. Just because it's not that expensive, we're just going to go ahead and replace all 4 rotors and all 4 sets of brake pads. So that way we know going forward that there's not an issue. We know we have good brakes. So it's pretty common, it seems like, on all our vehicles that we buy in our area. If there's any hills, people just ride their brakes and they end up warping the rotors. So we're going to go ahead and replace these. Again, like I said, now we got this out. We can start, the brake pads should just come off away from it. There's still some life on them. We'll compare them to the new ones. Same with this one here. Should just pull back. The new pads, we'll double check, should come with new pieces like this. So we can take those off. And then next we're going to do, we'll put the bolts back in here just so we don't lose them. And we'll take these bolts out. There should be 2. One there and one down there. These are going to be fairly tight. You'll need a 12-point socket or a box-end wrench. Get it on there and break it loose. All right, we got that bracket off. These are the 2 bolts. And that's a number 15 12-point socket. That works the best. Again, 2 of those bolts. Okay, so then now we're ready to remove the rotor. You're going to use a T50, Torx bit 50, to remove that bolt. Okay, once you remove that, we should be able to pull the rotor right off. Okay, so we got our old rotor off. This is what we're replacing it with. It's a Power Stop Euro Stop high carbon rotor. So it's got a coating to it, anti-corrosion coating. If you can see it, I don't run drilled or slotted rotors. If I was to run anything, it'd be a slotted rotor, but not drilled. I've had a bad experience. Every drilled rotor I've had warped prematurely, so especially under towing or mountain driving. So this works good. We've got this on the LR3 and haven't had any problems. Really like the way it works. So we're put the same brand on the LR4. But this is it. I'm going to go ahead and unpackage it, mount it on there. Unfortunately, the boot was missing on our old one. Otherwise, you would transfer. This is like a little inspection or adjustment boot for the parking brake. You'd transfer it over, but I'll have to try to locate one or order it. We're going to go ahead and put this on and put the rear brake back together. Okay, Kai's over here helped me too. So we got the parking brake cleaned up with some brake cleaner, and then she also cleaned up the hub assembly so everything slides on there, nothing binds up, and we're ready to put our new brake rotor on. We'll clean it with brake cleaner and get it installed. Okay, we slid the rotor on there. Now Kai's going to put that set screw in. Now this one, there was no Loctite on it. I don't think there's any need to because the wheel bolts up against it. So we're not going to put any. We'll put Loctite on the brake hardware. It had blue Loctite on it when we removed it. So we'll put just a dab of Loctite on it when we put it back together. We'll go ahead and get this T50 screw put on, bolted down, and start putting the caliper and pads back together. All right, so we just got everything back together. Put a little bit of Loctite, blue Loctite on our caliper bolts. Their new pads are in. Can't really see them. There we go. Again, these are Power Stop Extreme trailer tow pads. I really like the way they work on previous vehicles and our LR3, so excited to see how they work on this LR4. Now, anytime I have the wheel off, I'm always inspecting all my suspension, steering components, and I happen to look and notice something didn't look right. We got a broken stabilizer link. So broken rear stabilizer link. So we're going to go ahead and remove this, and I'll get some on order. But something, you never know. You get into something, start looking around. You want to check all those moving parts, especially stuff like that that's under load, for any damage. Catch it before it causes a problem on the road. So, all right, we're going to remove that link, and we'll put our wheel on and move on to the passenger side rear brakes, and I'm going to allow Kaya to do that one. Okay, so Kaya's going to do this other side. She traced up the wear sensor. The wear sensor on this is on the passenger rear, so she unplugged it. She's fishing it down, and if you just follow it, you'll see where it goes. It's got lots of little clips to lock itself into. We are replacing those, so we'll replace that when we go to do it. Now, she put some WD-40 on the caliper bolts. She's going to break those loose. There you go. So we'll do that on both of them, just using the number 15 to hold the nut and the 13 ratchet to turn the bolt. Get those pulled out, and then we'll pull the caliper. All right, Kai's going to remove the caliper. Gently prying that back. Nope, go on the other side of that metal plate. Yep. That metal plate will stay with the brake pads. There you go. And maybe if you pry from the bottom. She's probably a little snug because we compressed the other side. Nice and easy. Okay, should be able to, careful, don't want to drop it. There you go. So then we don't want to let it hang from the brake line. That's where you just kind of set it up here. We'll get a zip tie, we'll hold it up there, and then that's it. All right, so we got the caliper zip tied up out of the way. So your brake pads stay in there, and you'll just kind of pull it and pull them out. There you go. Still had a little bit of life, but I think it's good that we're changing them out. Okay, so now you need to take that bolt out, Kaya.
These?
Yep.
Okay.
And it's going to be number 15, 12 point with the big ratchet here. Okay, she's pulling them bolts off for the caliper bracket. We're getting this knocked out quick. So once she gets that out, we'll move that, and then I'll have her take that Torx 50 bolt out, and we'll have the rotor off. Oh, hit Guy in the head. So she got the Torx bolt out. Now she's pulling the rotor off. Much easier now that we released the parking brake. There you go. There's our rotor. Again, we're replacing rotors and pads, just not brake shoes for the parking brake. They look really good. We'll just clean them up real good, and we'll start putting this together. All right, guys, got the new rotor on. Torque bolt, T50 bolt is in. We had to loosen off the parking brake shoes a little bit, but now we got it on there. She rotates nice. She's going to go ahead and put her caliper bracket on, and then we'll put the new pads on. All right, she's got her new brake pads and guide clips in there. Now she's going to use a C-clamp and compress the brake caliper. Okay, she's got it all already compressed. Now we'll slide the rotor on. So she's got that seated in there. We'll get some Loctite on the bolts, and then she can thread that on there. All right, so we are replacing the wear sensor. This is the one for the rear. There's only one on the Land Rover. There's your power stop part number. So we'll go ahead and get this one on and put the wheel back on. We got the rear brakes replaced. Now we're going to do the front brakes. We'll go ahead and knock this side out, kind of show you guys what it is. On the front, the wear sensor is on the driver's side. On the rear, the wear sensor is on the passenger side. So keep that in mind. The Land Rover only has one sensor for the front, one sensor for the rear. So we're going to go ahead and remove our brake caliper and then also replace the rotor. So we'll get the caliper off, get the pads off, take the caliper bracket off. It's very similar to the rear, just bigger. The rear was a single piston. This is a two piston caliper, so it's a little bigger brake pads. They do have on the front, the brake pads are specific to the side. You'll see the outside brake caliper on both front setups has this round piece on it. So just keep that in mind. Your new ones will have that as well. That goes on the outside, and then we'll match up the inside. So we'll get this off, then we'll replace our rotor and start putting it all back together. And then we got to take it for a test drive / break-in procedure. Power stop as you do a break-in procedure for these pads that I'm using. So, all right, let's get started. All right, we pulled the caliper off. It's a number 13 bolts on this side and a number 17 wrench to fit in there. I just grounded it down so it's a little skinnier. This is one of my kind of extra wrenches I had. Fits right in there. Again, number 17. The rear was a number 15 for that, so just keep that in mind. So both of these are correct, number 13 bolts. On the driver's side, they had a number 12 bolt on the top and a number 10 bolt on the bottom. Threads are the same, but the bottom bolt was a little long, so they added 2 washers. So somebody's kind of worked on it and obviously lost some bolts. Didn't put the right ones back in, so we'll try to locate some bolts and get the right ones in there. So now we got to take off that bolt and that bolt with a 12-point socket. The ones I use, it fits nicely because I don't have a 12-point metric socket. I use a 13/16 and it fits on there perfect. They're going to be tight. We'll get them broke loose and that'll get that caliper bracket off. We'll pull the rotor off.
Oh my gosh.
You can see how tight it is. See if you can break the other one loose now. You'll be able to use a normal ratchet once you get them broke loose. So there is your brake lines that are right there. And your wire, just be careful, but your socket will fit on there. If not, if you have trouble, you can always use a box-in wrench. and then I'll fit on there as well. So Kai's gonna zip those out. We'll move on to the brake rotor. All right, Kai's taking that T50 bolt out, and that'll let us pull the rotor off, and we'll get the new one on there. She's pretty tight. Let me get some WD-40. Okay, Kai's getting the new rotor on. Once we get that on, we'll clean up the brake surface with some brake cleaner and a rag, and then we'll mount our caliper bracket and keep on moving forward. Okay, so now we got the caliper bracket on there. We're getting ready to put the caliper on. To compress your piston, since this has two, instead of fighting it, I just used an old brake pad, and it allows me to use a C-clamp and compress it down, just using the bolt head there, making sure not to damage the brake line. But she's compressed. Now we'll get the new pads on and slide that on. Kai's putting in their new brake pads, and then we'll slide that caliper down on it. We'll be just about done with this job. Well, unfortunately I lost the video for finishing up the brake job, but as you can see here, we have the braking procedures for power stop. It came with the brake pads. That's pretty straightforward. They want you to do 5 moderate to aggressive stops from 40 to 10 miles an hour. Don't come to a complete stop, and then you do 5 more from 35 to 5 miles an hour. Then you drive it easy for 5 minutes just to allow the brakes to cool down. You will smell the brake material, so just follow those instructions, and so far these brake pads have worked out good. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.